There are no three letters in the theme park industry more iconic than RMC. And sorry to all you viewers who thought I was going to say BNM, but unfortunately, ampersand is not a letter. That's a symbol. RMC have made a name for themselves over the last decade, taking terrible coasters and turning them into world-class thrill rides. They first hit the scene in 2011, transforming Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas into the new Texas Giant, to massive fanfare and admiration. Since then, they have gone on to create some of the most unbelievable coaster transformations in theme park history, including converting the classic Colossus into Twisted Colossus, dueling coaster Gwazi into the steel behemoth Iron Gwazi, and turning that pile of crap Mean Streak into one of the greatest coasters of all time, Steel Vengeance. On top of that, they have built some incredible ground-up creations, such as Lightning Rod at Dollywood and Zadra at Energylandia, as well as innovated the single-rail coaster with rides such as Wonder Woman's Golden Lasso Coaster and Jersey Devil Coaster. Now, I'm sure many of you watching have theorized on what the next RMC conversion could be, and I've heard many of the same ideas on forums and other YouTube videos. Rides such as The Boss at Six Flags St. Louis, American Eagle at Six Flags Great America, and Wild Beast at Canada's Wonderland are coasters that seem to pop up all the time in conversations on this topic. But outside of those coasters, a lot of other possible conversions seem to be getting put to the wayside, to the point where some enthusiasts feel there's nothing left to convert in the US. So today, I wanted to look outside the box, look a lot deeper, and talk to you about RMC conversions that nobody is talking about. And to start things off, I want to go way out of the box. The Magic Kingdom, the world's most popular theme park, bringing in millions of visitors each year from all around the world, with rides so historic that they feel like they haven't been touched in decades. And that includes our first entry on this list, Space Mountain. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Smooth, how the fuck do you RMC Space Mountain? I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous, but hear me out. You see, Space Mountain is a tight, twisty coaster where riders sit single file. And RMC happened to have a model that is tight and twisty, where riders sit single file. Yes, I am suggesting we tear out the old track on the coaster and convert it into an RMC Raptor. But we're not just building one of them, we're building two. Now, Space Mountain, as it is, feels like a relic of the past. It has become very rough and is loaded with outdated effects that put it light years behind the other Space Mountains in existence. The ride is so old that when they tried to add onboard audio to it back in 2010, the track couldn't hold the weight of the cars with speakers attached to it, so they were forced to slap speakers along the ride track, which created this weird sound effect where the soundtrack constantly increases and decreases in volume as you go along. So the idea here is to update the coaster to something that is more modern and fitting of this current generation of coasters. And in my opinion, there's no better way to update this coaster than adding Raptor track to it. Essentially, you'll have two sides just like before, but this time each track will offer a completely different experience. The Alpha side will offer a calmer, more family-friendly experience, essentially following the same ride path as before, but with way smoother transitions, passing galaxies and constellations on a fun, sightseeing trip through outer space. Meanwhile, on the Omega side, passengers are assigned to assist in protecting Starport 75 from an incoming meteor attack. This side will still follow the original ride path for the most part, while being a much more intense experience compared to the Alpha side, incorporating wave turns and off-axis hills, as well as more intense pops of airtime. Riders will blast through meteors and fiery nebulas, successfully saving the starport from the incoming attack. A conversion of this coaster would do wonders for the Magic Kingdom, and as long as they don't pull a Tron and take over 5 years to build the dang thing, there could be enough hype and fanfare to make this a real draw, and bring in some of those fans that have been jaded by Disney's lack of creativity and innovation over the last couple of years. From the sunny depths of Florida, we move to the mile-high mountains of Colorado for our next RMC conversion. Up next, we find ourselves at Elitch Gardens, a park that is worse than the football team that plays at the stadium a couple miles away. And sorry, Broncos fans, but after my home team, the Miami Dolphins, whooped y'all 70-20, I couldn't help but rub it in. But hey, at least you beat the Bears. I mean, that's worth something, I guess, right? Anyways, this park is headlined by an old aero-launched looping coaster, a Vekoma SLC, an Intamin half-pipe coaster, and this wooden monstrosity known as Twister 3 Storm Chaser. Now, I was shocked to find out that this coaster was updated recently, as there was barely anybody reporting on it. It was so irrelevant that when Screamscape reported on it, they had to redact their statement about the coaster's new train being part of the update, as those were actually changed back in 2019, 4 years before this update even happened. Now, I will say that I do like the new theming elements added to the coaster, with the new storm chasing aesthetic really breathing new life into it. But without changing anything about the coaster itself, it makes this conversion come off really cheap and pathetic. And with a park in desperate need of a new, modern coaster, this coaster is the perfect candidate for a classic RMC iBox remake. With its sheer size and length, this coaster could easily be transformed into a coaster similar to Hakuge at Nagashima Spa Land, with long, drawn-out moments of airtime and some inversions thrown here and there. By doing this, Elitch Gardens will finally have a landmark coaster that can capture the imagination of the coaster community as well as local park goers in the area. And although it might not turn Elitch Gardens into a must-stop destination, it will definitely get the ball rolling in terms of turning this park around and lifting it out of irrelevancy. Speaking of relevancy, let's move back down to Florida for our next entry on this list. In 2021, RMC revealed to the world their vision for the family hybrid coaster, with all the classic tricks RMC is known for, but done at a level that all members of the family can enjoy. And since this announcement, we've seen precisely 0 of them be built. I'm surprised parks haven't latched onto these the way we all expected them to, but with the advent of Vekoma's comeback in the American market, plus companies like Zamperla and SBF Visa having a major foothold in this market, it has made it very difficult for RMC to expand their craft into the world of family coasters. Hell, it says a lot that B&M of all companies have managed to enter the family coaster market in America quicker than RMC has, with the company in 2024 opening both Penguin Trek at SeaWorld Orlando and Phoenix Rising at Busch Gardens Tampa. At this point, the only way I could see RMC breaking into the family coaster market in America is to convert an existing family coaster into a hybrid and then go from there. And just like with B&M, the perfect place to start is in Florida. Located in Winter Haven, Florida, is a lovely little theme park called Legoland Florida. This park, which used to be known as Cypress Gardens, has been thrilling families since 2009, featuring giant Lego sculptures, as well as rides themed around many of the Lego products. And within this park is the subject of our next conversion, Coastersaurus. Now, this coaster opened back in 2004, when the park was still called Cypress Gardens. It was known as the Triple Hurricane. When the park was converted to Legoland in 2009, they decided to give this coaster a dinosaur theme, adding Lego dinosaur sculptures in the queue and shiny new Millennium Flyer trains from GCI. Now, even though this isn't a problematic coaster, I picked this coaster as a conversion simply because I feel RMC iBox track and Lego theming fit together like 2 peas in a pod. Like, the thought of them painting the track to look like it was built out of Lego bricks is too good of an idea to pass up. And the layout has a ton of airtime moments that could be accentuated with RMC style profiling, plus some twists and turns begging for some RMC twistiness. This coaster could start a great new trend in the American coaster market, taking old family wooden coasters and breathing new life into them. As well, this will become the second best coaster in Winter Haven, because we all know what the best coaster in Winter Haven is. Now this next conversion idea is a little off kilter, but it will make a ton of sense once I show you how this will be converted. This is bobsleds at Seabreeze in Rochester, New York, a steel family coaster with bobsled style cars that twists its way through a huge wooden structure. Now this coaster has a fascinating history. First opening as junior coaster in 1954, it opened as a family wooden coaster. It wasn't until park founder George W. Long rode the Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland that the decision was made to convert this coaster into a steel family coaster. Yes, decades before RMC, Georgie Boy here was already doing wood to steel conversions. So it is almost too fitting that this coaster be converted again to align itself with modern family coasters. But how will we convert this coaster? Well, let me ask you something. Does this coaster remind you of a certain type of RMC coaster? One that was only just recently announced? Well, if your answer is the RMC T-Rex, you really need to get yourself checked out. No, this coaster screams Wild Moose. This past year, RMC revealed the Wild Moose, a small family-style coaster built to fit within the space of a Wild Mouse coaster, featuring brand new trains that are very reminiscent of Gravity Group's Timberliner trains, and a layout featuring shoutouts to many of RMC's pre-lift sections. When researching for this video, I looked at bobsleds and realized this layout is perfect for a Wild Moose conversion. The coaster already is very Wild Mouse-esque and features all the elements that are present in the Wild Moose announcement video, including a ton of quick dips, turns, and even a helix. At a park where the most extreme coaster is a Mauer spinner, this coaster would fit perfectly into their lineup, and will make this park a new must-stop destination for coaster enthusiasts touring the northeast of America. Who said Wild Mooses had to be ground up, huh? Alright, let's move away from family coasters for a bit and talk about some big thrill coasters. Up next, we head to Kennywood in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, home to Thunderbolt, a classic wooden coaster designed by the great John A. Miller that dives in and out of a ravine. This is the oldest coaster on this list, first opening in 1924 as Pippin, before being expanded and rebranded as Thunderbolt in 1968, adding that iconic helix at the front of the coaster. Now, it might be sacrilegious to RMC this coaster, as it is an ace landmark and is considered a classic amongst many in the community. But I have my reasoning for picking this coaster over other classic wooden coasters, not only in this park, but in the state of Pennsylvania in general. Now, originally, I had Twister at Knoebels at this spot, but over time I felt that an RMC hybrid wouldn't work at a park like Knoebels, but could work pretty well in a park like Kennywood, especially when the park already has two other show stealers in Phantom's Revenge and Steel Curtain. This could give the park a triple threat that could rival fellow state park, Hershey Park. On top of that, this being a hybrid coaster that dives in and out of a ravine would make this very unique compared to other hybrid coasters, potentially giving this coaster more marketability compared to its direct competitor, Wildcat's Revenge. This will feature what will easily become the most iconic pre-lift to any RMC coaster, diving out of the station into the ravine before hitting a turn around and diving again before finally hitting the lift. Throw in a cutback and a wave turn during the helix section and a barrel roll at the final drop, and you got a recipe for a coaster that is even more memorable and iconic than the coaster that currently stands there. And while we're on the topic of awesome locations for a hybrid coaster, let's look at our next big RMC hybrid. From the beautiful ravines of Pennsylvania, we now move to the lovely lakes of Indiana. This is the Hoosier Hurricane, located at Indiana Beach in Monticello, Indiana. Surrounded by the waters of Lake Schaefer, this coaster has a picturesque setting and an iconic first drop. As well, this coaster features a great out and back layout that dives under bridges and over many of the park's pathways. Now, although I feel that RMC hybrid coasters work better on coasters with twister layouts, RMC has proven that they can make a banger out of an out and back layout, with Untamed at Wallaby Holland being a great example of this. As well, I feel this park really needs that standout coaster. And don't get me wrong, this park has a good lineup of coasters, with standouts like the Cornball Express and the Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain. But in there lies the problem. It's just good. It's not great. And adding coasters like Cyclone or the soon-to-be-built All-American Triple Loop is not going to pull in crowds to this park the way an RMC hybrid coaster can. And with a coaster like this, Indiana Beach can start making a true claim in the Indiana theme park market, potentially taking some eyes away from state competitor Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Not saying this will be better than the Voyage, but this will be pretty damn close. But if we're talking about an RMC conversion that could be more iconic than the Voyage, look no further than the next entry on this list. Woo! Time to piss off the entire coaster community with this entry. Yes, I am suggesting we RMC the Coney Island Cyclone. Now, I know this is a very iconic roller coaster, a landmark in New York City, and one of the first images that comes to mind whenever the words roller coaster leaves someone's lips. But I'm gonna be honest with y'all, every time I look at this coaster, I get this feeling that there's an accident waiting to happen on this thing. I mean, let's look at the stats. The coaster is nearly 100 years old, still uses these weird couch-looking seats with lap bars that don't even touch your lap, and has wood that is so old that it looks like a gust of wind could blow it over at any time. And yes, I am aware that GCI refurbished this coaster back in 2016, but it doesn't change the way I feel about it. On top of that, this coaster is incorporated into the new Luna Park, featuring some of the newest innovations in coasters and flat rides from everyone's new favorite company, Zamperla. So, having this old rickety coaster looming in the back of the park is too contrasting to what is in the rest of the park, at least in my opinion. An RMC hybrid would fit into this park a lot better in my opinion, feeling much more in tune with what the rest of the park has to offer. On top of that, RMC can redeem themselves for Twisted Cyclone, this time converting the entire layout instead of only doing half the layout and hitting autocomplete. The visual of an RMC along the beaches of New York would look incredible as well. Overall, this coaster will be able to join the rest of Coney Island in reinventing and revitalizing itself to be around for generations to come. We're nearing the end of this list, but before that, a word from today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legend. Nah, I'm just kidding. Do people even still play that game? Guess where we're going again? That's right, it's Florida! Now, this is a very off-kilter idea for a conversion, and it involves our buddy the Wild Moose again. So I was wondering to myself, what's the limits we can push this Wild Moose technology to? Could we go beyond a small family coaster and do something bigger, badder, and meaner? And then I came across Hurricane at Fun Spot Kissimmee, and right there I found my coaster. Now this coaster has been passed around more times than Ryan Fitzpatrick has around the NFL. This coaster started its life as Jackrabbit at Celebration City in Branson, Missouri, before being moved to Wild Adventures in Savannah, Georgia, where it was known as Viking Voyage. After 8 years, this coaster then laid in pieces at Fun Spot Atlanta, before finally being assembled at Fun Spot Kissimmee, where it operates to this day. Now this coaster looks absolutely nuts, with massive drops and insanely tight Wild Mouse-esque turns. It looks way more intense than it has any right to be. And not to mention the odd transitions and its rusty looking track. You can only hope to get off this coaster in one piece. Now, you've probably noticed that every steel coaster conversion I've mentioned so far features support columns with steel ties rather than the straight support columns found on most coasters these days. And this is really important when doing a conversion, as it is way easier to manipulate the layout of a coaster when you got that much steel to work with. So why Wild Moose? Well, as you can see, the coaster is pretty much a wild mouse on steroids, with small trains that can traverse tight turns and dips, much like the Wild Moose. So converting the coaster with smoother transitions and more interesting elements will not only make the coaster itself more interesting to ride, but will also make its passengers feel like they're not about to fly off the rails at any moment. And now from a coaster that looks like garbage, we go to a coaster that's actually garbage. Up next, we got another park owned and operated by IB Parks. This is Clementon Park in Clementon, New Jersey, home to one of the roughest wooden coasters in all of America, Hellcat. This is one of only 4 wooden coasters to ever be built by SNS Worldwide. The other 3 being Timberhawk Ride of Prey at Wild Waves in Washington, Falcon at Farup Summerland in Denmark, and the defunct Avalanche at Timber Falls Adventure Park in the Wisconsin Dells. Now, it's kind of a shame to call this coaster garbage, as it actually has a really good layout. And go figure, considering this coaster was designed by none other than Alan Schilke, the man that brought us the RMC Hybrid coaster, as well as the RMC Raptor and the SNS 4th Dimension coaster. I especially love this upwards double helix that leads into this massive pop of airtime. It's such a shame that whoever ran this park before IB Parks took so little care of it that it's now a shaky, vibrating mess. It's gotten so bad that they don't even let people ride in the back 2 cars anymore, just to ensure they don't have a lawsuit on their hands. And if you don't believe me, check how El Toro Ryan fared on this piece of crap.
Oh yeah, it's ripping. Oh my god! Holy oh my god! Holy crap! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Holy oh my god, dude! Oh my god! Oh, that was awful. That was atrocious. But I'm gonna do it again.
Now, this coaster could work very well as an RMC hybrid. Maybe add an outward bank on the first airtime hill, a step up underflip before the first turnaround, and a corkscrew at the top of the double helix, while retaining all the other airtime hills in the coaster. And you got a recipe for a banger hidden gem of a coaster. Now, I am concerned about the location of this, as Clementon isn't the greatest amusement park in the world. But if Fun Spot Atlanta could open up a ground-up banger in Area Force 1, then I don't see how Hellcat could be out of the realm of possibility. But if we're talking about coasters that sit in the uncanny valley of possibility and impossibility, the final coaster on this list sits firmly in there. The final stop on this countdown takes us to the coaster capital of the world, Cedar Point. Home to some of the greatest coasters on God's green earth, such as the lightning quick Maverick, the goat of floater airtime Millennium Force, the insanely intimidating Top Thrill 2, and RMC's greatest creation, Steel Vengeance. But Smooth, I hear you ask, how can you convert a coaster at a park that already has an RMC conversion? Don't you realize there is no other coaster in the park that can be converted into a hybrid? You're not suggesting we turn Gemini into a Wild Moose, are you? Why don't you talk about RMC Boss instead, you dummy? Well, let me remind you of something. At the beginning of this video, I suggested turning a bobsled style coaster into an RMC Raptor. And I did that on purpose. Because you see, there is a step up from the Raptor. A coaster that is almost a myth in the coaster community. Day after day after day, I see videos from other YouTubers talking about when and where we could see this coaster type come to reality. And day after day, this coaster feels like it moves further away from seeing the light of day. It is a model that could potentially change the game in the coaster industry, but feels so out of reach because no park wants to pull the trigger on it. This coaster is known as the RMC T-Rex, a single rail roller coaster built to accommodate side-by-side seating, with the ability to bring that unique RMC style experience while going as tall as any coaster before it. Now, surprisingly, I'm kinda with y'all in the idea that Cedar Point could be where we see this technology debut, but I don't think it will be as straightforward as a simple ground-up coaster. Instead, I can see the park converting a coaster into a T-Rex, doing something never before seen, turning a mega coaster into an even more mega coaster. But what coaster exactly could be transformed like that? Is such a transformation even possible? Well, remember when I said that supports are the key. There is one coaster that could actually fit the bill for such a transformation, and people will either love this idea or completely hate it. But either way, I'm suggesting it. My final coaster that I am suggesting RMC converts is none other than Magnum XL 200.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yes, the world's first hypercoaster, reprofiled with single rail track, going taller than before, faster than before, with smoother transitions and better airtime. I know Magnum is one of the perennial coasters of Cedar Point, but let's not act like this coaster is not dated. I mean, the airtime hills are literally shaped like triangles, and the coaster completely peters out after the mid-course breaks. This new version of Magnum doesn't even need to have inversions to become a staple in the park's lineup. All it has to do is focus on ejector airtime and perfect pacing, and it could easily surpass Millennium Force and Maverick in people's rankings, and maybe even compete with Steel Vengeance for best coaster in the park. Even though this won't push the T-Rex technology to its absolute limits, it doesn't need to. Just like the coaster before it, this is a proof of concept. Proof that a single rail coaster could hit the insane heights of a hyper coaster and provide a more thrilling ride than any hyper before it. And as cool as a 500-foot RMC T-Rex would be, I don't see any park, let alone Cedar Point, even going through with a coaster like that. Especially in this economy, the only parks that could afford such a coaster are parks with tons of oil money backing them up. This is probably the most realistic chance any of us have of seeing an RMC T-Rex come to fruition. So all of you saying the 500-foot super mega T-Rex is coming to a park near you, get it out of your head. It's never happening. That being said, crazier things have happened in the coaster industry, and I would love to be proven wrong. I had a lot of fun putting together this list for you all, looking at all the wacky, crazy possibilities that could come from an RMC conversion. And even though some of these ideas are kinda unrealistic, I wouldn't deem any of them impossible. RMC time and time again go beyond what we all think is possible with roller coasters. From throwing launches and inversions onto wooden roller coasters, to bending steel track in ways we never thought was possible. Every year, they stun us with their innovation and creativity. If one thing is for certain, it's that RMC will continue to capture the imagination of the coaster community and keep us all thrilled and enthused for years to come. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button and enable notifications. A like on this video would be really appreciated as it helps bring more fun, creative content like this to you all. If you have any ideas for crazy off-kilter RMC conversions, leave your ideas in the comments section below. I'd love to see what you all could come up with. My name's Smooth, and until next time, I wish you all nothing but smooth travels. Take it easy, y'all.
Yes, sir! Okay! Now, here we go! On top! Yeah, okay! Now we're going down! Turning! Good! Okay! Now we're going around and returning! I thought that was an inversion! Okay!